Hey guys, it's Brox doing a very quick update video to the Bouldercane video I put out yesterday. We did some more kind of playing around in theory crafting with this build based on a question that we were trying to resolve, which was how can we get rid of basic skills, right? Because weaving basic skills is a terrible thing. It feels terrible. It's partially the reason that I don't really enjoy Diablo 4 as a game, is because of the reliance on having to have builders and spenders. So every time I look at a build, specifically in Diablo 4, I try to figure out how we can get rid of the builder portion so we can just do a spender build. And that prompted a bunch of questions that kind of took us down a rabbit hole of solving some of the outlying problems of why we were using a builder in the first place. So if you haven't seen my original Bouldercane video that I released yesterday, I would advise, if you have any questions for like the Paragon tree, to go check that out. We did not change anything on the Paragon tree, so it is exactly the same as the video from yesterday. That you can, again, there's a deeper dive of that on the video yesterday, but we did change some things in the skill tree, and we definitely made some changes to the gear. So I kind of wanted just to run through this really quickly and explain kind of the thought process of what changed and why it changed. So the first question we had to ask ourselves was, why are we even using a builder? And when we looked at it, the reason we were using a builder was we needed a way to shapeshift out of bear form when we were spam casting Boulder so that we could proc Inner Beast. The second problem that we were solving with the builder, which we swapped to Wind Shear in further review, was the movement speed procking. So Wind Shear gives you a plus 20% at its cap for 5-second move speed buff. And then we were using the Vampiric Power Moonrise, which gave you a plus 15% additional move speed buff for 10 seconds if you stacked up your basic attack 5 times. So Wind Shear would have to be weaved in to everything else that we're doing 5 times every 5 to 10 seconds, which is not really efficient for the build because Hurricane's only up for roughly 11 to 12 seconds, and we want to be spamming as many boulders into that Hurricane period as possible. And if we're having to animation shoot out a Wind Shear 5 times every 5 seconds within that 12-second window, then we're losing a lot of boulder damage. We're losing a lot of boulder spam and boulder uptime. This is actually a really big damage loss, so getting rid of Wind Shear is actually crucial to really ramping up our damage and making spamming boulder kind of the primary purpose of the build. So that was the first thing. So when we were looking at it, we're like, okay, so we need to solve 2 problems. We need to be able to come out of bear form and trigger the Inner Beast node for the resource cost reduction, and then we need to find move speed, right? So the answer to that was to get rid of petrification, and that kind of snowballed a bunch of different changes that really amplified the build and solved both of those problems. Petrification was really there because it provided 2 things for us. One was a ton of spirit on kill with 25 spirit on kill, which would basically make allowing for us to spam boulder possible. Every time we would kill an enemy, we'd basically get a free boulder, right? So it would kill an enemy, we'd get free boulder. Kill an enemy, get a free boulder. And that's really powerful. It also is a massive damage boost. So while everything was petrified, it was taking a ton more damage. Removing petrification created those 2 problems, which was the damage loss, but it also created the problem of we needed to regain that massive amount of spirit regeneration back. But removing it allowed us to get rid of Flicker Step. And removing Flicker Step is actually incredibly empowering for this build because it allows us to put Ghostwalker's aspect back on, and with a double move speed pair of boots, you can get 93.6 or 93.2%, or actually, yeah, 93.2% move speed on just your boots. So we can almost move speed cap just by making this change and not having to rely on Wind Shear and Moonrise to create extra movement speed. And that control, where Flicker Step being a unique, we don't have the ability to roll affixes and actually control what we get on our boots, is a massive increase in movement speed that is up pretty much the entire time. So the big affixes to kind of look at is obviously the pure move speed, which has a 26.2% cap, and then 42% cap after killing an elite. And then of course, while we're unstoppable, we get an additional 25%. I'm going to ignore the evade grant 75% movement speed for 1 second at the top, because you want the implicit that says that your damage that you do reduces the cooldown of evade by 1 point something seconds over 1 second, because we're going to be doing so much damage. Our evade is basically always going to be available. So we want that cooldown reset from our damage on our boots, so that we can always be having the availability to evade. But again, if you're just looking at these max rolls, 26.2, 42, and 25 is 93.2%. And that's a lot of moves. I mean, that's just under 7% off cap. And we could get that extra 7% from some other areas, but I don't think that's necessary. I think 193% movement speed is plenty. And I think this is all we would need to really solve the movement speed problems. So once we did that, we then realized that we can get rid of Moonrise. So we can go back to the conversation that we had in the first video about putting Domination back in, which allows us to basically execute or cull enemies once they hit that 35% health threshold, which helps again efficiently help us clear trash mobs as we run through dungeons. It's just going to make that a smoother process. The other thing that it allowed us to do is pick up Undying in replacement for Anticipation, because we're not using Petrify anymore. We're actually picking up, we don't need Anticipation for the ultimate skill cooldown reduction, which allows us to pick up Undying, which means that casting Boulder, so every time we're spamming Boulder now, we're getting healed for 3% of our life, and if we're below 50% life, that's 6% life, which is a massive kind of healing threshold to keep us alive. It's a good way to actually have healing outside of potions. So once those three things kind of took an effect, we knew that we had to solve the resource loss. So we put Umbral back in place of Retaliation. So it's another damage loss. So we definitely pulled back a damage here. So we took some damage off the table by removing Retaliation and by removing Petrify. But we're going to replace that with just more fluid kind of smoothness of the build and how the build plays, but also allowing us to throw more boulders. So while it's a on paper net negative of damage, the more boulders we could get out during the time that we're not using Wind Shear, the better for us, right? Because those boulders are going to get all the amplifications, and if you can actually get like 15, 20 boulders out because you're not having to animation lock yourself into Wind Shear, then you're doing way, way more than what Petrify was going to provide you, and way, way more than what Retaliation was going to provide you. So putting Umbral on allows us to quickly regenerate a lot of that primary resource loss that we would have, because everything again is still doing crowd control effects as we hit enemies. So that's just going to replace the loss of Spirit from Petrify. So now that we lost Petrify, we had to replace Petrify. And when we were looking at options, the one that really stood out was Bloodhound. Bloodhound brings to the table more spirit. So now instead of on kill getting 25 spirit, now on Bloodhound's cooldown as it goes through, we're going to pick up 20 spirit every time we howl. But we also get to heal ourselves for 20% of our maximum life, and then kills reset the cooldown. So every 15 kills, or a little less than 15 because you're going to be moving and time moves as you're moving, anywhere from like 13 to 15 seconds, we're going to be able to generate 20 spirit and heal ourselves. And that heal is going to help us also be amplified by Undying, right? So casting skills heals us for 3%. So this is really technically like 23% healing every time Blood Heal goes off. And then every time we cast Boulder, we're getting another 3%. So it's a lot of healing that we're going to be pumping out consistently now to guarantee that we if we take damage, it's going to be pretty quickly healed back to full. In that, we also got rid of Calamity because we don't need the ultimate skill duration extension, and we picked up Bolster, which will fortify us for 15% of our max life when we use a defensive skill. So now that we're spamming Bloodhowl, we are going to be fortifying for a ton more of our life each time that we use Bloodhowl as a defensive skill. And the Bloodhowl also solved the problem of coming out of bear form to trigger the inner beast node. So now every time that we cast Bloodhowl, that's going to trigger our inner beast node. Every time we cast Poison Creeper, that's going to trigger our inner beast node. Every time we refresh Arcane, it's going to trigger our inner beast node. So now we have a more reliable way when we need it to come out to refresh our inner beast spirit cost reduction legendary node and keep our boulder costs down. So we can do that now without the reliance on wind shear. So we can basically remove wind shear from the build. I took it off the bar here because I didn't even want to see it anymore because we're not really going to ever cast it. You could actually just run this build as it looks and you should be theoretically fine because you have, again, so much spirit generation from other resources in other areas. The other benefit of this is, again, we can kind of affix control our boots, which every time that we have control, it's a little bit better of a result. Now, when we jump over to the skill tree, and the changes we made here is obviously we took the points out of wind shear because we don't need to spend points there. We also removed Iron Fur in replacement for Vigilance because this will actually give us more consistent damage reduction for 6 seconds every time we cast Bloodhowl rather than the 9% damage reduction while we're in Werebear form. So this is actually just a better version of damage reduction, so we're going to take that. We also recapped out our resistance to all elements. Bloodhowl, again, we're going to take it for the Spirit node. And then the other adjustments we made is we removed Resonance because we're no longer casting a Storm skill on Weave for Boulder, which we were using Wind Shear or Storm Strike for in the previous video. We're not doing that anymore, so we don't need Resonance. We moved the 3 points Resonance to Safeguard to allow all of our boulders as they critically strike to fortify us for 7% of our maximum health. This is a lot of fortifying that's going to be coming in every critical strike of our boulders, and couple that with the Bloodhowl, that's going to help basically keep us capped off on the fortify thanks to Bolster in the boons. So then everything else is pretty much identical as the skill tree was in the prior video. Again, the big changes were we're not really using a basic skill anymore. We have added a defensive skill back in, and we removed Petrify from the equation. So all in all, the net result of this is that everything still works. So symbiotic aspect still works to bring down the cooldown of Hurricane. We are still in Werebear every time that we are casting Boulder. This allows us to make use of not only the Inner Beast legendary node for reducing the spirit cost reduction of our boulders, but also allows us to keep survival instincts where we can pick up that extra 50% multiplicative between us and any enemy that's below 50% health. And then we can also keep the damage reduction while in Werebear form for our glyph. So it was very big that we kept those intact. We kept the standard baseline basics here. The real winner here is now we don't have to hunt for movement speed by spamming basic attacks, which take us, you animation lock us out from casting Boulder, which is our primary damage source. And we pick up all that movement speed as flat movement speed, and we can get pretty much close to movement speed cap without having to rely on timed durations and stacking buffs. We just get it innately, not having to run flicker step, which also allows us a much better reliance on healing and also allows us calling on trash mobs so that we can move quicker through dungeons. All in all, I think this is a better version of the one I put out yesterday because we're starting to solve the remaining problems with the build, like it being slow. Looking at it, you know, we were potentially going to be slower than a Necromancer because we just were hunting for ways to kind of move faster. And I don't think we have to hunt anymore. I think this really kind of covers that niche perfectly. We don't have to use a basic skill now at all. You can just cut it from the build entirely. You can run this as a 5-button build. and you're still going to get the same quality results, if not better, because you're going to be throwing more boulders, and boulder is the key here. So just wanted to put this quick update together. I think you guys are really going to like this one. I think it's near done now. I don't think there's many more things to kind of go through. This is probably its final version since the new season starts on Tuesday. So good luck. If you guys enjoy it, obviously let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, if you actually were able to put this together. Oh, that's another notation. You don't have to hunt for a 4th unique. So you only now have to hunt for 3 uniques. So good luck with that, you know, in getting the 3 that you would need to run this build. So you guys enjoy Season 2. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully this makes it a little bit of smoother gameplay as you guys are going through those nightmare dungeons. Have a good one.